The morning sun cast long shadows across the Seoul Defense Command Center when the first reports came in. Captain Lee Hyun stood before the massive display screens, watching radar signatures that made no sense. The objects were huge, far larger than any aircraft humanity had ever built. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching from high orbit," reported Lieutenant Park Jin, his young face pale with concern. "They're not responding to any communication attempts." Lee Hyun studied the data streaming across his screens. 12 massive objects, each one the size of a small city, descended slowly through Earth's atmosphere. Their movement was deliberate, controlled, nothing like meteors or space debris. These were ships and they belonged to someone else. "Get Dr. Kim Nara on the line," Lee Hyun ordered. "We need our best xenobiologist here immediately." Within an hour, the ships had positioned themselves over major cities around the world. One massive vessel hung directly above Seoul, its shadow covering nearly half the city. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the sunlight. It made no sound, defying everything humans understood about physics and engineering. Dr. Kim Nara arrived at the command center, her scientific equipment in tow. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Have they made any attempt at communication?" she asked, immediately focusing on the most important question. "Nothing we can understand," Lee Hyun replied. "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but it's unlike any language or signal pattern we've encountered." On the main screen, all the alien ships began to pulse with a soft blue light. The pulsing grew brighter and more frequent until suddenly, every television, radio, and communication device on Earth received the same signal. The transmission was clear, spoken in perfect human languages. "People of Earth," the voice said, cold and without emotion. "We are the Velothi Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our labor force. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Compliance is not optional." The transmission continued, explaining in clinical detail how humanity would be reorganized. Adults would work in mining operations and construction projects across Velothi space. Children would be educated in Velothi ways and integrated into the lower castes of their society. Earth's resources would be harvested efficiently under proper management. "This is insane," whispered Choi Hana, a civil engineer who had been called to help assess the alien technology. She had been working on infrastructure projects in the city when the ships arrived. Now she found herself in the command center, trying to make sense of an impossible situation. Dr. Kim Nara worked frantically to analyze the transmission. "Their technology is incredibly advanced," she reported. "The fact that they can speak our languages perfectly suggests they've been studying us for some time. But there's something strange about their communication patterns." "What do you mean?" Lee Hyun asked. "They speak like they're reading from a manual," Kim Nara explained. "There's no negotiation, no attempt to understand our perspective. It's as if they've done this many times before and expect the same result every time." The alien ships remained motionless for the next several hours. Around the world, panic spread through major cities. Governments called emergency sessions. Military forces mobilized, though everyone understood that conventional weapons would likely be useless against such advanced technology. Lee Hyun gathered his senior staff. "We need to assume they mean what they say. What are our options?" Park Jin pulled up tactical displays. "Our missiles and aircraft can't reach them at that altitude. Even if they could, their technology is clearly centuries ahead of ours." "Maybe we should try to talk to them," suggested Kim Nara. "There might be room for negotiation." As if responding to her words, the alien ship above Seoul began to descend. It moved slowly, majestically, until it hovered just a few kilometers above the city center. A smaller craft detached from the main vessel and descended to street level, landing in the middle of a large public square. "They want to meet," Lee Hyun said grimly. "Assemble a diplomatic team." The meeting took place in an empty government building. The alien representatives were tall, elegant creatures with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They moved with fluid grace and spoke through small devices attached to their throats. "I am Ambassador Corvin of the Velothi Empire," the lead alien announced. "We have come to formalize your species' integration into our civilization." Dr. Kim Nara stepped forward. "We appreciate your contact, but humanity values its independence. Perhaps we can discuss some form of partnership instead." The alien's expression didn't change. "Partnership implies equality. Your species lacks the technological advancement necessary for equal status. Integration as a labor class is the most beneficial outcome for all parties. And if we refuse? Li Hyun asked directly. Refusal is not a logical choice, Corvin replied. We have demonstrated superior capabilities. Resistance would result in unnecessary destruction and loss of life. Compliance ensures your species' survival and productive contribution to galactic civilization. Choi Hana spoke up from behind the diplomatic team. You're talking about slavery. We prefer the term structured integration, the alien said smoothly. Your species will receive food, shelter, and purpose. Many worlds have benefited from Velothi guidance. The meeting continued for 2 hours, but it became clear that the aliens had no interest in genuine negotiation. They had arrived with predetermined plans and expected humanity to accept them without question. After the aliens departed, the human team reconvened at the command center. They've never encountered resistance before, Kim Nara observed. Everything about their behavior suggests they expect automatic compliance. Well, they're about to learn something new about humanity, Li Hyun said grimly. As if to demonstrate their power, the Velothi chose a remote military installation in the Australian desert for their display. The base was evacuated, and then the alien ship fired a single beam of energy. In seconds, the entire facility simply vanished, leaving only a perfectly circular crater in the earth. The message was clear. Humanity had advanced weapons, but the aliens had the power to erase entire cities effortlessly. That night, as Li Hyun stood on the command center balcony looking up at the alien ship hovering overhead, Choi Hana joined him. They expect us to surrender, she said quietly. Yes, Li Hyun replied. They've probably conquered dozens of species this way. Show up, demonstrate overwhelming power, and wait for capitulation. But we're not going to surrender, are we? Li Hyun looked at her, then back at the alien ship. No, we're not. They may have superior technology, but they've made one crucial mistake. What's that? They don't understand what they're dealing with. They see a primitive species that should be grateful for their guidance. They don't realize they've just declared war on the most stubborn, creative, and vengeful species in the galaxy. The 72-hour deadline was still ticking down, but Li Hyun already knew what humanity's answer would be. The Velothi Empire was about to learn that some species simply refused to kneel, regardless of the odds. The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin. The 72-hour deadline passed with humanity's answer delivered in the most human way possible. Instead of formal rejection through diplomatic channels, every major city simultaneously broadcast the same message on all frequencies. It was simple, direct, and left no room for misunderstanding. Go home. Ambassador Corvin stood in the command center of his flagship, studying the response with what humans would recognize as confusion. In 300 years of expansion, the Velothi Empire had never received such a response. Species either surrendered immediately upon seeing their technological superiority, or begged for more favorable terms. None had ever simply said no. Begin Phase 2 operations, Corvin ordered his tactical officer. Deploy ground forces to major population centers. Standard pacification protocols. The Velothi had perfected their conquest strategy over centuries. Overwhelming show of force followed by surgical strikes to disable military infrastructure, then occupation of key cities. Most species surrendered before Phase 2 even began. But as the first Velothi dropships descended toward Seoul, Captain Li Hyun was ready. All units, execute Plan Delta, he broadcast to hidden positions throughout the city. Remember, we're not trying to win individual battles. We're showing them this won't be easy. The Velothi dropships landed in the main square, their energy shields shimmering in the morning light. 50 tall, elegant warriors emerged, their weapons humming with contained power. They moved in perfect formation toward the government district, expecting terrified civilians and token resistance from primitive human soldiers. Instead, they found empty streets and an eerie silence. The first explosion came from beneath their feet. Park Jin had spent the past 3 days working with city engineers to place charges in the storm drain system. The blast didn't penetrate the Velothi shields, but it sent them stumbling, their perfect formation broken. Then the real harassment began. Choi Hana led a group of civilians armed with nothing more than construction equipment and basic rifles. They fired from building windows, then disappeared through prepared escape routes before the aliens could respond. The bullets bounced harmlessly off Velothi armor, but each shot forced the aliens to take cover and reassess their position. "This is inefficient," the Velothi squad leader reported to his ship. "The local population refuses to present clear targets for pacification." More charges exploded throughout the city. Not enough to cause serious damage to the advanced alien forces, but enough to slow their advance and force them to move cautiously. Every intersection became a potential ambush point. Every building could hide attackers who would fire a few shots and then vanish. Dr. Kim Nara worked frantically in an underground laboratory, studying fragments of Velothi equipment recovered from their landing sites. "Their technology is incredibly advanced," she reported to Lee Hyun via secure radio. "But it's also incredibly complex. They're using power sources I can barely understand, but complexity means potential points of failure." The Velothi forces reached the government building where they expected to accept humanity's surrender. Instead, they found it empty except for a single message painted on the wall. "You wanted a war. Now you have one." Similar scenes played out across the globe. In New York, Velothi forces found themselves trapped in subway tunnels by collapsed debris. In London, human fighters used the fog and rain to conduct hit-and-run attacks that left the aliens constantly looking over their shoulders. In Tokyo, coordinated electromagnetic pulses disrupted Velothi communication systems for precious minutes at a time. None of these attacks caused significant damage to the alien forces, but they had an effect the Velothi hadn't anticipated. For the first time in their military history, their soldiers began to feel uncertain. "The local population employs tactics outside standard military doctrine," reported Major Thane from the London operation. "They show no regard for acceptable rules of warfare." Ambassador Corvin reviewed the reports with growing frustration. "Clarify your statement, Major." "They use deception, false retreats, attacks from civilian structures. They dress as non-combatants, then attack when we approach. They destroy their own infrastructure to deny us strategic positions. This behavior is contrary to civilized warfare protocols." "They are primitive," Corvin replied dismissively. "Increase pressure until they comply with proper surrender procedures." But the humans had no intention of following Velothi expectations. Park Jin discovered that certain frequencies could interfere with Velothi shield generators. The interference only lasted seconds and didn't disable the shields completely, but it created moments of vulnerability. "We're learning," he reported to Lee Hyun. "Every engagement teaches us something new about their capabilities and limitations." Choi Hana organized civilian resistance, networks that shared information faster than the Velothi could intercept it. Children on bicycles carried messages between districts. Elderly citizens watched alien patrol routes and reported them through ham radio networks. Shop owners provided food and shelter to resistance fighters. The Velothi had expected to control major population centers within hours. Instead, after 3 days of fighting, they held only the ground their soldiers physically occupied. The moment they moved to a new location, humans reoccupied the previous position. Dr. Kim Nara made a breakthrough discovery while analyzing Velothi neural interface technology. "They're networked," she explained to the command team. "Their soldiers share information instantly through biological quantum connections. It makes them incredibly coordinated, but it also means they all think the same way." "What does that mean for us?" Lee Hyun asked. "It means they can't adapt to truly random tactics. Their entire military doctrine is based on predictable responses from conquered species. But humans are chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable." The Velothi began calling for reinforcements, something that had never been necessary in previous conquests. Ambassador Corvin found himself explaining to High Command why a supposedly primitive species was requiring additional resources. "They resist beyond logical parameters," he reported. "Standard psychological pressure has no effect. They appear to view certain death as preferable to compliance." "Impossible," came the reply from Velothi High Command. "All species have survival instincts. Increase pressure until their leadership sees reason." But the Velothi were discovering that humanity had no single leadership structure they could pressure. Military forces operated independently when cut off from command. Civilian groups formed their own resistance cells without central coordination. Even children participated in intelligence gathering and sabotage activities. On the 5th day of occupation, something unprecedented happened. A small group of Velothi scouts simply disappeared. Their equipment was found abandoned in a soul alley, but the soldiers themselves were gone. Park Jin's teams had successfully captured their first alien prisoners using nothing more than construction nets, smoke grenades, and careful timing. The Velothi soldiers were unharmed but completely bewildered by their capture, by creatures they considered technologically inferior. "This changes everything," Dr. Kim Nara said as she examined the captured Velothi equipment. "Now we can really start learning about their technology." News of the capture spread through human resistance networks worldwide. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had taken prisoners rather than simply surviving alien attacks. Ambassador Corvin received the report with something approaching alarm. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The humans employed coordinated deception tactics," his tactical officer reported. "They created false electromagnetic signatures to mask their real positions, used chemical irritants to confuse our soldiers' enhanced senses, then employed primitive physical restraints that our armor couldn't automatically counter." For the first time in Velothi military history, a conquered species had captured their soldiers. The implications were staggering. If word of this spread to other subject species within the Empire, it could inspire revolts across dozens of worlds. The humans, meanwhile, were just getting started. They had learned that the seemingly invincible Velothi could be beaten, captured, and their technology studied. The war was about to enter a very different phase. Captain Lee Hyun stood in his command bunker, looking at intelligence reports from around the world. Everywhere the same pattern was emerging. The Velothi were powerful, but they were rigid, predictable, and completely unprepared for the kind of warfare humans specialized in. They wanted a quick, clean conquest, he said to his staff. Instead, they've gotten themselves into exactly the kind of long, messy fight that humans excel at. The Velothi Empire was about to learn that conquering Earth would require far more resources than they had ever imagined. 2 weeks had passed since the first Velothi soldiers were captured, and Park Jin barely looked like the same person. Dark circles surrounded his eyes from endless hours in the underground workshop, but his face glowed with excitement. Around him, human engineers worked day and night taking apart alien technology piece by piece. "We're making real progress," he reported to Captain Lee Hyun during their daily briefing. "The Velothi energy systems work on completely different principles than ours, but we're starting to understand the basics." The workshop was a maze of cables, circuit boards, and alien components that hummed with strange energies. Human tools that had seemed advanced just weeks ago now looked primitive next to the elegant Velothi devices. But human creativity was finding ways to bridge that gap. "Show me," Lee Hyun said. Park Jin led him to a workbench where a team of engineers had been working on a captured Velothi weapon. The original alien device was sleek and beautiful, its surface smooth as glass. Next to it sat a crude human copy built from car parts, computer circuits, and salvaged alien components. "It's not pretty," Park Jin admitted, "but it works. We can't replicate their power source yet, but we found a way to make their energy chambers function with our electrical systems." He activated the device. A beam of energy shot out, much weaker than the original but clearly based on the same technology. The beam cut through a steel plate like it was made of paper. "How many can you make?" Lee Hyun asked. "With current materials, maybe 50 units, but that's not the important part." Park Jin's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm that had made him one of Earth's best young engineers. "The important part is that we understand how it works now. We can improve it, adapt it, make it better suited for human tactics." Across the city, Dr. Kim Nara was making discoveries of her own. The captured Velothi soldiers had provided an unexpected opportunity to study alien biology up close. She kept the prisoners comfortable and unharmed, but every conversation and medical scan revealed new information. "They're remarkable creatures," she explained to Choi Hana, who had become her unofficial assistant. "Their neural interfaces allow instant communication across vast distances. Their enhanced senses can detect electromagnetic signatures we can't even measure, and their physical coordination is perfect." "Sounds like we're outmatched," Choi Hana said. "In direct comparison, yes," Kim Nara agreed, "but they have a critical weakness. Their neural networks make them predictable. They literally think alike, process information the same way, and reach identical conclusions." She showed Choi Hana brain scans taken from the prisoners during questioning. "Look at these patterns. When we ask them tactical questions, their neural activity follows identical pathways. They can't help but think in the same patterns because they're connected to the same network. So how do we use that against them? Kim Nara smiled. We do things that don't make sense to their way of thinking. We act irrationally, chaotically, in ways their networked minds can't predict or counter. Meanwhile, Captain Lee Hyun was implementing exactly that kind of thinking on a global scale. Traditional military doctrine called for defending strategic positions and maintaining supply lines. Instead, Lee Hyun ordered human forces to abandon fixed positions entirely. From now on, we're nomadic, he announced to military commanders worldwide. No permanent bases, no predictable patrol routes, no standard operating procedures. Every operation should be different from the last one. The results were immediate and devastating to Velathi planning systems. Their tactical computers, designed to predict enemy movements based on logical military principles, became useless when humans stopped following any logical patterns. In London, human fighters would attack a Velathi position, retreat when reinforcements arrived, then circle back to attack the reinforcements from behind. In Tokyo, resistance cells would sabotage alien supply lines, then immediately switch to completely different tactics in different parts of the city. Choi Hana had become one of the most effective resistance leaders, precisely because she wasn't a soldier. Her background in civil engineering gave her a unique perspective on urban warfare. We're not trying to hold territory, she explained to her team of civilian fighters. We're trying to make their occupation as expensive and frustrating as possible. Every day they stay here should cost them more resources than the day before. Her team specialized in what she called infrastructure warfare. They would damage power lines just enough to require repairs, then attack the repair teams. They would block roads with debris that took hours to clear, then mine the alternate routes. They turned the city itself into a weapon against the occupiers. The Velathi found themselves spending more time on logistics and repairs than on actual military operations. Their advanced technology required constant maintenance, and human sabotage was making that maintenance increasingly difficult. Park Jin's engineering teams made another breakthrough when they discovered how to disrupt Velathi neural communications. The aliens' greatest strength could be turned into a weakness with the right electromagnetic frequency. It's like jamming a radio signal, he explained to the others. We can't break their connection permanently, but we can create interference that makes their coordination break down for short periods. The first test was conducted during a Velathi patrol in Seoul. As the alien soldiers moved through the city center, hidden human devices activated, broadcasting electromagnetic interference on the specific frequencies used by Velathi neural networks. For 30 seconds, the perfectly coordinated alien soldiers became confused and disoriented. They stumbled, looked around uncertainly, and failed to respond to each other's signals. In those 30 seconds, human fighters struck from multiple directions, then disappeared before the aliens could recover. It works, Park Jin reported excitedly. We can blind them, make them deaf to each other, turn their greatest advantage into our opportunity. Dr. Kim Nara was developing biological weapons specifically designed to target Velathi physiology. Not lethal weapons, but compounds that would make the aliens sick, disoriented, or unable to use their enhanced senses effectively. Their biology is adapted for their home world, she explained. They're not used to Earth bacteria, Earth atmospheric conditions, or Earth chemical compounds. We can use that against them. She developed aerosol compounds that would cause Velathi soldiers to experience severe allergic reactions to Earth's atmosphere. Other compounds interfered with their enhanced vision or scrambled their sense of smell. None of the weapons were fatal, but they made it increasingly difficult for Velathi forces to operate effectively on Earth. The combined effect of these innovations was remarkable. Within 3 weeks of the first captures, human resistance had evolved from desperate survival to active technological warfare. Captain Lee Hyun reviewed reports from around the world with growing satisfaction. They're requesting more reinforcements, he told his staff. A supposedly primitive species is forcing one of the galaxy's most advanced empires to commit increasingly large resources to a single planet. But the most important development was happening in space. Park Jin's teams had successfully reverse-engineered basic Velathi propulsion systems. The first human spacecraft capable of leaving Earth's atmosphere was under construction in hidden facilities around the world. We're not going to limit this fight to Earth, Lee Hyun announced. If they want a war with humanity, we're going to take it to them. The Velothi had expected a quick conquest followed by efficient resource extraction. Instead, they found themselves in an increasingly expensive and complex military operation against an enemy that grew stronger and more dangerous every day. Ambassador Corvin received reports of human technological progress with something approaching panic. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They're adapting our technology faster than our own. Engineers developed it. The human neural structure appears to be optimized for rapid learning and creative problem solving," his science officer reported. "Their individual thinking patterns are chaotic, but highly effective for innovation under pressure." For the first time since the invasion began, some Velothi officials began to wonder if they had made a serious mistake. The primitive species they had planned to enslave was demonstrating capabilities that challenged everything the Empire believed about technological superiority. The war was about to enter a phase that would shock the entire galaxy. The first human starship looked nothing like the elegant Velothi vessels. Where alien ships were smooth and graceful, the human craft was angular and brutal, built from salvaged materials and reverse-engineered technology. Park Jin stood in the makeshift shipyard, watching welders attach the final armor plates to what humanity was calling the Soul's Revenge. "She's not pretty," he admitted to Captain Lee Hyun, "but she'll fly faster than anything the Velothi have ever seen." The ship was a testament to human ingenuity under pressure. Velothi propulsion systems had been stripped down and rebuilt using human engineering principles. Instead of elegant energy flows, the human version used brute force and redundant systems. It was less efficient but far more durable. "How long until she's ready?" Lee Hyun asked. 2 days, Park Jin replied. "But sir, we should talk about the crew. This isn't going to be like flying Earth aircraft. We're talking about interstellar combat against technology we barely understand." Lee Hyun nodded grimly. "I'll be commanding personally. Choi Hana has volunteered to lead the boarding teams, and Dr. Kim Nara insists on coming along to study any alien technology we encounter." The decision to take the war beyond Earth had not been made lightly. For 2 months, humanity had proven they could survive Velothi occupation and even inflict significant casualties, but they were still fighting a defensive war on their home planet while the aliens controlled space and could bring in unlimited reinforcements. Dr. Kim Nara had identified the key weakness in Velothi strategy during her interrogations of captured soldiers. "They've never had to defend their supply lines," she explained to the War Council. "For 300 years, they've been the attackers, always moving forward, always conquering new territory. Their entire military doctrine is built around overwhelming force projection, not defense." "What does that mean for us?" Lee Hyun asked. "It means their supply depots, communication relays, and staging areas are probably undefended. They've never needed to protect them before." The Soul's Revenge launched on a cloudy Tuesday morning, carrying a crew of 50 volunteers. The ship's departure was kept secret from most of humanity, but Velothi sensors detected the energy signature immediately. "A human vessel has achieved orbital velocity," reported the tactical officer aboard Ambassador Corvin's flagship. "This should not be possible with their primitive technology." "Destroy it," Corvin ordered without hesitation. But the human ship was already gone, jumping to faster-than-light speed using a modified Velothi drive system. The aliens discovered that human modifications had actually improved the efficiency of their own technology, allowing the crude Earth vessel to outrun their pursuit ships. 3 days later, the Soul's Revenge emerged from hyperspace near a Velothi supply depot orbiting a distant star. The depot was a massive structure, larger than any human city, designed to service the entire Velothi fleet operating in Earth's region of space. "No defensive ships," reported the human navigator. Just like Dr. Kim predicted, Choi Hana led the first human boarding party in history. They wore crude spacesuits cobbled together from diving equipment and salvaged Velothi life support systems. Their weapons were a mix of modified human firearms and captured alien technology. The Velothi depot crew had never encountered hostile boarders. Their security systems were designed to prevent accidents and regulate traffic, not repel military attacks. Human fighters moved through the station's corridors like a natural disaster, destroying critical systems and capturing vital intelligence. "We're in their main computer core," Choi Hana reported via radio. Dr. Kim was right. They store everything in central databases. We're downloading their fleet positions, supply schedules, and communication codes. The raid lasted only 6 hours, but the damage was catastrophic. The Velothi lost their primary supply depot for the entire Earth operation, along with enough stored resources to support their fleet for months. More importantly, humans now had detailed intelligence about Velothi operations across dozens of star systems. News of the successful raid spread through human resistance networks within hours. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had struck back at the aliens in space on their own terms, using their own technology against them. The psychological impact on the Velothi was enormous. Ambassador Corvin found himself trying to explain to High Command how a primitive species had successfully attacked Imperial infrastructure. The humans appeared to have reverse-engineered our propulsion technology, he reported. Their vessel demonstrated capabilities that should have required decades of development. Impossible, came the reply from Velothi High Command. Primitive species cannot master Imperial technology without proper neural interfaces and centuries of education. Nevertheless, the depot is destroyed and the humans escaped with classified information. For the first time in Empire history, High Command ordered a review of security protocols for all Imperial installations. The idea that conquered species might develop the capability to strike back had never been considered. On Earth, the success inspired a new wave of innovation. Park Jin's teams began construction of a second ship, then a third. Each vessel incorporated lessons learned from the first mission and featured improvements to both speed and firepower. Dr. Kim Nara made another crucial discovery while analyzing data captured from the depot raid. The Velothi Empire is much larger than we thought, she told the War Council. They control over 200 star systems and have subjugated dozens of different species. That sounds like bad news, Captain Lee Hyun said. Actually, it might be the best news we've had, Kim Nara replied. Look at these rebellion reports. She showed them intelligence files describing unrest on Velothi-controlled worlds. Species that had been conquered decades ago were beginning to question Imperial authority. Reports of the human resistance had spread throughout the Empire, inspiring subject peoples who had given up hope of freedom. They're afraid, Kim Nara continued, not of our military capabilities, but of what we represent. We're proof that the Empire can be resisted, that their technological superiority doesn't guarantee victory. The second human raid targeted a Velothi communication relay responsible for coordinating fleet movements across an entire sector. Choi Hana's boarding teams had evolved into a disciplined strike force, using captured Velothi equipment and tactics learned from previous missions. The humans are adapting our own strategies against us, reported Major Thane from the London Occupation Force. They're using Imperial technology more effectively than some of our own units. The communication relay raid was even more successful than the first. Human forces not only destroyed the facility, but captured an entire Velothi corvette, complete with crew and classified databases. Park Jin's teams now had access to complete Velothi ship designs and manufacturing specifications. Within weeks, human shipyards were producing vessels that combined the best of both human and alien technology. We're not just copying their designs anymore, Park Jin explained excitedly. We're improving them. Human engineering principles are actually more efficient in some applications. The third raid targeted a Velothi research station studying human biology and psychology. The aliens had been trying to understand why humanity refused to surrender despite overwhelming odds. Dr. Kim Nara reviewed the captured research files with grim satisfaction. They still don't understand us, she told the others. They're trying to find some logical explanation for human behavior, some pattern they can predict and counter. And they can't find one? Lee Hyun asked. They can't find one because there isn't one. Human unpredictability isn't a flaw in our psychology. It's our greatest strength. We don't think like them, don't plan like them, don't fight like them. That's what makes us so dangerous. By the end of the 4th month, human forces had conducted 12 successful raids on Velothi installations. Each mission brought back new technology, fresh intelligence, and proof that the supposedly invincible empire could be beaten. More importantly, reports were coming in from across Velothi space. Subject species were beginning to rebel, inspired by human example. The Empire found itself fighting simultaneous uprising on dozens of worlds. Ambassador Corvin received an urgent message from High Command. Terminate Earth operation immediately. Return all forces to suppress rebellions in core systems. But it was too late for a clean withdrawal. Human forces now controlled Earth's orbital space and were actively hunting Velothi ships throughout the local star cluster. The Empire's attempt to conquer one small planet had sparked a galactic revolution that threatened their entire civilization. Captain Li Hyun stood on the bridge of the newest human warship, watching Velothi vessels retreat from Earth orbit. "They came here expecting easy prey," he said to his crew. "Instead, they found the one species in the galaxy too stubborn to know when they're beaten." The war was far from over, but the tide had definitively turned. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for the freedom of every species the Velothi had ever conquered. 6 months after the first human starship left Earth, Captain Li Hyun commanded a fleet of 30 vessels spread across 3 star systems. The ships bore little resemblance to their crude predecessor. Human engineers had not only mastered Velothi technology, but had begun creating hybrid designs that outperformed the original alien vessels. Status report from all task forces. Li Hyun ordered from the bridge of the flagship New Sol. Task Force Alpha has liberated the mining colonies in the Kepler system, reported Commander Park Jin, now leading his own squadron. The local species, the Zephyrians, have joined our coalition. They're providing mineral resources and technical expertise. Task Force Beta has successfully disrupted Velothi supply lines to the Rigel sector, came another report from Choi Hana, who commanded the human boarding specialists. 3 more species have declared independence from the Empire. Dr. Kim Nara worked from the fleet's mobile research station, coordinating with liberated alien scientists. "We now have technology sharing agreements with 7 different species," she reported. "Each one brings unique capabilities that strengthen our combined forces." The war had evolved far beyond Earth's original fight for survival. What started as humanity's desperate resistance had become a galaxy-spanning revolution that threatened the foundation of Velothi civilization. The Zephyrians contributed advanced metallurgy that made human ships nearly indestructible. The crystal-based Lumiari provided energy weapons that could penetrate any known shielding. The aquatic hydrants shared biotechnology that allowed rapid healing and enhanced physical capabilities for coalition forces. But perhaps the most valuable allies were the Kogani, a species that had been enslaved by the Velothi for over a century. Their intimate knowledge of imperial infrastructure and military procedures proved invaluable for planning coalition attacks. "The Velothi have never faced this kind of coordinated resistance," explained Keth, the Kogani military advisor, who had become Li Hyun's chief strategic planner. "Individual species have rebelled before, but never in coordinated groups with shared technology and unified command. The coalition's success stemmed from something the Velothi had never encountered: interspecies cooperation based on voluntary alliance rather than forced submission. Each member species contributed their unique strengths while maintaining their independence and cultural identity. Human, faster-than-light communication systems, reverse-engineered and improved from captured Velothi technology, allowed instant coordination across dozens of star systems. Coalition forces could plan complex, multi-front operations with precision that matched or exceeded Imperial capabilities. Were receiving surrender offers from Velothi garrisons in 12 systems, reported the communications officer. They're requesting safe passage to Imperial core worlds in exchange for abandoning their positions. Li Hyun considered the request. The coalition had a policy of accepting surrenders and treating prisoners humanely, something that had shocked many species accustomed to Velothi brutality. Grant their requests, he decided, but strip them of all weapons and technology first, and make sure they spread the word that the coalition treats surrendering forces fairly. The psychological warfare aspect had become as important as military victories. Word was spreading throughout the Empire that coalition forces offered genuine liberation, not conquest. Velothi subject species were abandoning their posts and switching sides in increasing numbers. Ambassador Corvin found himself commanding a shrinking fleet while trying to contain rebellions that erupted faster than they could be suppressed. His reports to High Command grew increasingly desperate. "The human coalition now controls over 50 star systems," he reported. "Their technology advances daily, and their numbers grow with each liberated world. Recommend immediate deployment of the Imperial Guard." The Imperial Guard represented the elite of Velothi military forces, troops that had never been deployed against subject species because they had never been necessary. Their activation meant the Empire was acknowledging a threat to its very existence. But even the Imperial Guard struggled against coalition tactics. Human unpredictability had spread to their alien allies, creating a fighting force that defied every principle of conventional warfare. They attack our strongholds, while ignoring strategic positions, reported Imperial Guard Commander Vex. They liberate civilian populations before securing military objectives. They share captured technology freely instead of hoarding advantages. Their entire approach to warfare is incomprehensible. Dr. Kim Nara had established research exchanges with scientists from dozens of species, creating an unprecedented level of technological cooperation. The result was rapid advancement that left even human engineers amazed. "We're not just combining existing technologies," she explained to the coalition leadership. "We're creating entirely new fields of science. Human creativity combined with Zephyrian precision, Lumiari energy manipulation, and Hydran biological expertise is producing results none of us could achieve alone." The latest breakthrough was a new form of faster-than-light travel that required no fixed infrastructure. Coalition ships could now appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, making traditional defense impossible. Park Jin led the first test of the new drive system, taking a small fleet directly into the heart of Velathi space. The target was the Empire's primary military academy, a symbolic fortress that had never been threatened in 300 years of expansion. "Begin the assault," Park Jin ordered as coalition ships materialized around the academy. The attack lasted only 4 hours, but its impact was immeasurable. The academy surrendered without significant resistance, its cadets and instructors shocked by the sudden appearance of forces they had been taught were primitive and helpless. More importantly, the Academy's complete military database fell into coalition hands. Every Velathi strategy, every classified operation, every secret weakness was now available to their enemies. "We have their complete order of battle," reported the intelligence officer. "Fleet positions, supply schedules, defensive plans for every major installation in the Empire." Choi Hanna used the captured intelligence to plan simultaneous strikes on 12 critical Velathi installations. Coalition forces hit Imperial shipyards, research facilities, and command centers across 100 light-years of space in perfectly coordinated attacks. "It's not possible," Commander Vex reported to High Command. "No force should be able to coordinate operations across such distances with such precision." Yet they struck all targets simultaneously with overwhelming force. The Velathi Empire began to fragment as regional commanders lost contact with central authority. Some declared independence and tried to establish their own territories. Others attempted to negotiate separate peace deals with the coalition. A few simply abandoned their posts and fled to remote systems. "The Empire is collapsing," Dr. Kim Nara reported to the Coalition Council. "But we need to be careful about what replaces it. Power vacuums can create chaos that hurts innocent populations." The Coalition faced a challenge no one had anticipated: how to manage the peaceful transition of power across dozens of star systems while preventing the humanitarian crisis that could result from Imperial collapse. Captain Lee Hyun addressed the galaxy via captured Velathi communication networks. "The Coalition offers protection and assistance to all species seeking freedom from Imperial rule. We do not seek conquest or domination. We seek a galaxy where every species can determine its own destiny." The message was broadcast in over 100 languages to every inhabited world in known space. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Systems that had been loyal to the Empire for centuries declared independence and requested coalition protection. Within weeks, the rebellion had spread beyond the Velathi Empire's borders. Other galactic powers found their own subject species inspired by the coalition's example. What had started as Earth's fight for survival had become a galaxy-wide revolution for freedom and self-determination. "We need to talk about what comes next," Lee Hyun said to the coalition leadership. "We're winning this war, but winning is just the beginning. We need to build something better than what we're destroying." The Velathi Empire, which had dominated the galaxy for 3 centuries, was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. But the coalition faced the enormous challenge of creating a new galactic order based on cooperation, rather than conquest. The war that nobody could contain was about to reshape the entire galaxy in ways that even humanity had never imagined. 1 year after the first human starship left Earth, Captain Lee Hyun stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship, watching the final Velothi stronghold surrender. The massive fortress that had once been the Empire's military headquarters now flew white, flags of capitulation alongside the banners of a dozen liberated species. "The war is over," reported Commander Park Jin from the communications station. "Admiral Corvin is requesting permission to come aboard for formal surrender ceremonies." Lee Hyun nodded slowly. It felt strange to have achieved something that had seemed impossible just months ago. The mighty Velothi Empire, which had dominated the galaxy for 3 centuries, had collapsed not through conquest but through the complete breakdown of their ability to maintain control. "Grant his request," Lee Hyun said, "and make sure Dr. Kim Nara and Choi Hana are present for the ceremony. They've earned the right to see this through to the end." The surrender ceremony took place in the main conference room of the flagship New Seoul. Admiral Corvin, formerly Ambassador Corvin, entered flanked by his remaining senior officers. The Velothi looked smaller somehow, their elegant bearing diminished by months of military defeats and political collapse. "I formally surrender all remaining Velothi forces to the Coalition," Corvin announced, his voice carefully controlled. "We request safe passage for our personnel to designated sanctuary worlds." Dr. Kim Nara stepped forward. Throughout the war, she had maintained contact with Velothi prisoners and refugees, working to understand their culture and find ways to achieve peaceful coexistence. "The Coalition accepts your surrender," she said formally. "All Velothi personnel will be granted safe passage and assistance in relocating to worlds of their choosing. No one will be forced to remain in Coalition space against their will." Corvin's composure finally cracked slightly. "You offer us mercy after we attempted to enslave your entire species?" "We offer you what we wanted for ourselves," Lee Hyun replied simply. "The right to determine your own future." The surrender formalities were completed quickly, but the real work was just beginning. The Coalition now controlled or protected over 200 star systems, home to dozens of different species with varying levels of technological development and political sophistication. Choi Hana had transitioned from military commander to civilian administrator, leading efforts to establish democratic governments on liberated worlds. "The biggest challenge isn't military anymore," she reported to the Coalition Council. "It's helping species that have been enslaved for generations learn how to govern themselves. Some worlds adapted quickly to freedom, establishing representative governments and joining the Coalition as equal partners. Others struggled with the concept of self-determination after centuries of imperial control. A few descended into chaos as different factions fought for power in the absence of Velothi authority. Park Jin led technological assistance programs, sharing advanced Coalition science with developing worlds while helping them maintain their cultural identities. "We're not trying to make everyone like humans," he explained to new Coalition members. "We're trying to give everyone the tools they need to become the best version of themselves." The Coalition's approach was unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of imposing a single system of government or technology, they offered assistance and protection while allowing each species to develop according to their own values and needs. Dr. Kim Nara established the Galactic Research Cooperative, bringing together scientists from across known space to tackle challenges too large for any single world to handle. Climate restoration, disease eradication, and technological development projects were shared freely among all member species. "We're proving that cooperation produces better results than competition," she told a gathering of Coalition scientists. "When species share knowledge instead of hoarding it, everyone benefits." The former Velothi territories were transformed into a loose confederation of independent worlds united by mutual defense agreements and trade partnerships. Some chose to maintain their original governments, others experimented with new forms of democracy, and a few developed entirely unique political systems. Captain Lee Hyun found himself in the unexpected role of galactic mediator, helping resolve disputes between species that had never interacted as equals before. His reputation for fairness and his species' record of keeping promises made him a trusted figure across dozens of worlds. "The humans could have conquered us all," observed Keth, the former Kogani slave who now served as Coalition diplomatic coordinator. "They had the military power and technological advantage. Instead, they chose to liberate us and then step back to let us govern ourselves." The Coalition's success inspired other regions of the galaxy, Species under the control of different empires began their own liberation movements, often requesting coalition assistance and guidance. What had started as Earth's fight for survival had become a galaxy-wide transformation toward freedom and self-determination. But perhaps the most important development was happening on Earth itself. The planet that had nearly been enslaved was now the symbolic center of galactic freedom, hosting the Coalition's governing council and serving as a meeting place for species from across known space. "We've become something we never expected," Lee Hyun said during a private meeting with his original team. "We're not just survivors anymore. We're the guardians of an idea that freedom is worth fighting for." Choi Hana laughed, remembering the desperate early days of the resistance. "Do you think the Velothi ever imagined that attacking one small planet would lead to the collapse of their entire civilization?" "They made the classic mistake," Dr. Kim Nara observed. "They assumed that technological superiority meant automatic victory. They never considered that there might be forms of strength that can't be measured by weapons or ships." Park Jin pulled up a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds glowed with the symbols of free, self-governing species. Trade routes connected previously isolated systems. Research stations shared knowledge across vast distances. "Look at what we've built," he said with wonder. "Not through conquest or force, but through cooperation and mutual respect." The transformation wasn't complete, and challenges remained. Some species struggled with the responsibilities of freedom. Pirates and warlords tried to exploit the collapse of imperial authority. Disputes arose between neighboring worlds over resources and territory. But the Coalition had established something unprecedented, a galactic community based on voluntary association rather than forced submission. When conflicts arose, they were resolved through negotiation and compromise rather than military force. Years later, historians would debate whether humanity's greatest contribution was their military resistance to the Velothi invasion, or their demonstration that different species could coexist as equals. But for those who lived through the transformation, the answer was clear. "We didn't just win a war," Captain Lee Hyun reflected as he stood once again on Earth, watching ships from dozens of worlds arrive for the annual Coalition Assembly. "We proved that there's a better way for civilizations to interact." The Velothi Empire had come to Earth expecting to add another conquered species to their list of achievements. Instead, they had encountered something that their rigid, hierarchical thinking couldn't comprehend or defeat: the human refusal to accept that might makes right. In trying to enslave humanity, the Velothi had unleashed a force they couldn't contain, not just human military capability but human values. The idea that every species deserved freedom, that cooperation was stronger than domination, and that technological advancement meant nothing without moral progress. The galaxy would never be the same. Where once mighty empires had ruled through fear and force, now free worlds worked together toward common goals. The war that the Velothi couldn't contain had ended not with the victory of one species over another, but with the triumph of freedom over oppression. And at the center of it all was the small blue planet where it had all started, where a supposedly primitive species had looked at seemingly impossible odds and said simply, "No, we will not surrender." The universe had learned what the Velothi discovered too late. Humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to give up on the idea that freedom was worth any sacrifice.